She came to cook for a cowboy, but the child she hid changed his life forever. The Martian sun dipped low behind the red dunes, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jace stood at the edge of his dome, his gaze sweeping over the robotic sheep grazing near the hydroponic fields. Life on the Martian frontier was quiet, almost too quiet. He had chosen this solitude years ago, preferring the sound of wind over chatter, the smell of the soil over city smells. Out here, humans were rare and friendship rarer. Yet today, something unusual was stirring in the distance. A small shuttle descended slowly, leaving a trail of pale smoke against the fading light. Jace frowned. Visitors were uncommon. The colony nearby was mostly automated, relying on drones and remote workers. No one came out this far unless there was a serious reason. When the shuttle touched down, a figure emerged. She was tall and thin, with dark hair pulled back into a tight braid. Her jumpsuit was spotless, and her boots made crisp impressions on the Martian soil. She carried a small bag slung over her shoulder and moved with a confident, purposeful step. Jace walked toward her, keeping his hands relaxed at his sides. "Evening," he said. "You lost." The woman shook her head, smiling faintly. "Not lost, just delivering something." "I'm Amara." She extended her hand. Jace hesitated a moment before shaking it, noticing her grip was firm, steady. "I came to help. I hear you could use some cooking around here." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Cooking? Out here, I manage just fine." Amara chuckled softly. "Maybe. But humans like variety, and I'm good at variety. I can make meals that last for weeks, all nutritious, all from minimal ingredients. Thought you might like that." Jace studied her. There was a strange spark in her eyes, a mixture of intelligence, curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite place. He didn't usually trust strangers easily, but something about her made him nod. "Well, the kitchen's not far. You can start there if you want." Amara's smile widened and she set down her bag. But as she did, Jace noticed something unusual, a small, covered container tucked carefully in the bottom corner. It was no larger than a backpack, but it seemed to move slightly, almost as if it were alive. That's not mine," he said cautiously. "It's nothing dangerous," Amara said quickly, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "Just part of my work." She avoided looking directly at him and gently adjusted the cover. Jace's curiosity grew, but he didn't push. Some secrets were best discovered in time. Inside the dome, life went on as usual. Robots hummed as they tended to the crops. Water systems circulated clean Martian water, and the hydroponic greens glistened under the artificial lights. Amara moved through it like she had been here before, inspecting the devices, checking the soil sensors and occasionally scribbling notes in a small digital pad she carried. Jace watched her, impressed despite himself. "You've done this before?" he asked. "Many times," Amara replied. "I've worked in colonies across the system, but Mars is different. The soil, the air, the gravity, it changes how humans and machines work together." She glanced toward the covered container again, then back at Jace. "It's delicate, needs attention." Jace didn't ask more. He had learned long ago that questions forced too much trust too soon. Instead, he returned to his usual tasks, letting her settle in. That evening, as the two prepared the first meal together, Jace noticed Amara's skills went far beyond cooking. She didn't just make food. She analyzed nutritional content, experimented with flavors, and even suggested slight adjustments to the farm's nutrient output so the plants would grow healthier. "You're not just a cook," Jace said. "I suppose not," Amara admitted. "I like helping humans in every way I can." Her eyes softened, but then her gaze flicked to the small, covered container again. Night came early on Mars, and the dome's interior glowed warmly against the cold darkness outside. Jace found himself talking more than he usually did, explaining the rhythms of the farm, the robotic systems, and the lonely stretches of Martian plains. Amara listened carefully, occasionally nodding or asking small, thoughtful questions. And then there was a sound. A tiny, almost imperceptible cooing like a baby's laugh. Jace froze. He hadn't expected life beyond the usual robots and crops. Amara's eyes widened slightly. "Oh," she whispered. "That's okay, you can hear it." From under the cover, a small head peeked out. Wide, curious eyes stared at Jace and a tiny hand waved. Jace blinked, unsure what to do. This wasn't a normal visitor, not by any measure. "This is Eli," Amara said softly. He needs care. I brought him with me." Jace's mind raced. A child on Mars was a huge responsibility, especially one that wasn't officially registered with the colony. Why here?" he asked slowly. "Because he's special," Amara replied. "And because I think he needs someone like you." Her words were calm, but there was a depth to them that made Jace uneasy and curious at the same time. Eli blinked, reaching out his tiny hand toward Jace. Against his better judgment, Jace knelt slowly, letting the small child touch his gloved hand. The contact was electric, not in a shocking way, but in a sense of connection. Jace felt something stir inside him he hadn't felt in years, a protective instinct, a spark of care, a warmth in the emptiness of his routine life. The night deepened, and Amara prepared a simple meal while Eli slept in a soft, portable crib. Jace found himself watching both of them, realizing that this unexpected arrival had already begun to change the rhythm of his lonely life. "This is going to be interesting," he murmured to himself, half smiling. Amara looked at him, a quiet understanding in her gaze. "It already is," she said. As the dome lights dimmed, the Martian wind howled softly outside. But inside there was warmth, curiosity, and the faint hum of new beginnings. A human had arrived with a secret, a child with an unknown potential, and a cowboy whose life was about to change forever. And for the first time in a long while, Jace felt that Mars wasn't so lonely after all. The morning sun on Mars was soft, a pale yellow that filtered through the dome's reinforced glass, spilling over rows of green plants and silver robot workers. Jace stood at the edge of the crop field, scanning the robotic sheep as they grazed, their metal bodies humming in unison. Eli, the small child Amara had brought, sat on the floor near the kitchen, his wide eyes following every movement. He wasn't like any child Jace had ever met. Even at his small age, there was a depth to his observation. He watched the robots, the plants, and Jace himself with a focus that was almost unsettling. Amara moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, preparing breakfast while keeping one eye on Eli. She hummed softly as she worked, her hands shaping dough into perfect shapes while her mind ran calculations for nutrition and efficiency. "You know," Jace said, leaning against the counter, "I didn't think cooking could take this much science." Amara looked up, a small smile on her face. "On Mars, nothing is simple. Even making bread can be a challenge when the gravity is lower and the humidity is near zero." She carefully placed a tray of golden rolls in the small oven, then turned to Eli. "Do you want to try?" Eli's tiny hand reached out, and Amara guided him carefully. He pressed his fingers against the dough with surprising gentleness, yet with a precision that made Jace raise an eyebrow. It was as if the child could feel the perfect texture and know exactly how to shape it. "Interesting," Jace muttered. "I've never seen a kid work like that." Amara's lips curved into a knowing smile. "He's special, you'll see." After breakfast, Jace took his usual rounds, checking on the crop sensors and irrigation lines. Eli followed, toddling behind with Amara's guidance. The child's curiosity was endless. He touched the sensors, watched the water flow through the pipes, and even tried to mimic the small adjustments Jace made to the robotic herders. Jace couldn't help but laugh. "Careful, little one. Those bots aren't toys." Eli's eyes shone with understanding. He pointed at a sensor that was flickering, then at the control panel. Jace leaned down to examine it, and sure enough, one of the moisture sensors had slipped slightly out of alignment. Eli's tiny gesture had saved a day's worth of crops. Seems like he already knows more than I do about the farm, Jace said in disbelief. Amara knelt beside Eli, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. He learns fast. He's been designed to notice patterns humans might miss. Jace stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. I didn't expect, well, this. He's amazing. The day moved on with quiet efficiency. Jace and Amara worked side by side while Eli explored and learned. They repaired broken irrigation lines, adjusted solar panels, and even tested new nutrient formulas for the hydroponic crops. Each time, Eli watched and occasionally pointed out something they might have missed. By mid-afternoon, the dome was warm with sunlight and the hum of machinery. Jace paused to sip water from his flask, watching Eli carefully manipulate a small drone that Amara had let him experiment with. The child's movements were precise, almost like he understood the drone's programming without instruction. "Where did you get him?" Jace asked softly. Amara hesitated, then replied, "He's part of my research. I built him to help humans, to understand, to learn, to assist." She didn't elaborate, but Jace didn't push. He realized some secrets revealed themselves in time. The bond between the three of them grew quietly. Eli's presence brought a new rhythm to the ranch. Mornings were filled with curiosity and laughter. Afternoons were spent in careful study and work. And evenings were warm, with stories, music, and shared meals that seemed richer because of the child's joyful fascination. One evening, as the Martian wind whipped outside, Amara brought out a small tablet and began showing Eli simple patterns of numbers and symbols. Jace watched in amazement as the child began recognizing sequences, predicting outcomes, and even suggesting small adjustments that were accurate and clever. "He's learning faster than most children," Amara said softly. "And not just learning, understanding." Jace knelt beside Eli, watching him carefully. "You know, I've never met anyone like him. Even humans can't do this." Eli looked up, his eyes bright, and gave a small, innocent smile. Jace felt something stir in his chest, a mix of awe, pride, and protectiveness. Days turned into weeks. The routine of the ranch became intertwined with Eli's growth. He learned to help with simple tasks, feeding the robotic sheep, checking sensors, even assisting with repairs. But he also brought something else, a sense of perspective. One morning, Jace was inspecting the solar panels when Eli toddled up, pointing at one of the tilted panels. Jace frowned. "It's fine. They'll adjust automatically." "No, wrong angle," Eli said, pointing more insistently. Jace knelt and examined the panel. It was slightly off from the optimal tilt. He adjusted it, and immediately the power output improved. "I don't know how you see that," Jace said, astonished. Eli clapped his tiny hands, pleased. Amara smiled knowingly. "He notices details humans often miss. It's part of who he is." The human ingenuity of the Martian colony and the child's enhanced perception combined in ways that Jace found both thrilling and humbling. Tasks that had seemed routine became opportunities for discovery. The farm grew more efficient, the crops healthier, and even the robotic herders seemed to move with more coordination. But it wasn't just about work. There were small, quiet moments that made the connection deeper. Eli laughed when Jace tripped over a tool. He frowned when a robot made a mistake. He even comforted Amara when she looked tired after a long day. The child's empathy was remarkable, as if he could feel the emotions of those around him in a way humans rarely could. One night, as the Martian sky darkened outside the dome, Jace sat with Eli on his lap while Amara prepared dinner. The stars glittered like diamonds, distant suns lighting the red dust of the planet. Jace felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. "You're going to change everything here, little one," he whispered to Eli. The child's tiny hand rested on his arm as if understanding. Amara joined them, placing a warm meal on the table. "He already has," she said softly. "You just haven't realized it yet." Jace looked at both of them, feeling a strange mixture of awe and responsibility. He had thought life on Mars would be quiet, predictable, maybe lonely. Instead, he had found family, companionship, and a spark of something extraordinary. Even the robots seemed to sense it. They moved more smoothly, their sensors more responsive, as if inspired by the harmony of human and machine working together. The ranch was no longer just a farm. It was a place of learning, growth, and unexpected joy. Over the next few days, Jace found himself relying on Eli's insights more and more. The child's small gestures often led to discoveries that saved time, energy, or resources. And yet, he did it all without judgment, without expectation, simply noticing, understanding, and acting. Amara watched quietly, occasionally offering guidance, but mostly letting Eli interact with Jace. She knew that trust and connection couldn't be forced. They had to grow naturally. And grow they did, in quiet, meaningful ways that promised a future none of them could have predicted. By the end of the week, Jace realized something profound. Life on Mars wasn't just about survival. It was about discovery, collaboration, and unexpected connections. And Eli, small, curious, and extraordinary, had already begun to reshape the rhythm of their world. Jace smiled as he watched Eli toddle toward a small hydroponic system, pointing at a leaf that needed trimming. "You're teaching me more than I thought possible," he murmured. Amara joined him, her eyes warm. "That's what humans do, Jace. We learn, we adapt, and we grow, especially when we care." Eli clapped his hands in delight, his eyes shining. And in that simple, quiet moment, Jace knew that the arrival of this child, this strange, remarkable human, was just the beginning of something extraordinary. Mars was no longer a lonely planet. It was a place of hope, of learning, and of a new kind of family. And as the sun set behind the red dunes, Jace, Amara, and Eli sat together in the warm glow of the dome, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. The Martian morning began quietly, almost deceptively so. The red horizon glowed faintly as Jace checked the sensors for the day. The robotic sheep grazed in harmony, the hydroponic crops gleamed under the artificial sunlight, and the dome systems hummed their familiar, comforting tunes. But then, a warning flashed on the main console. Jace frowned. Storm approaching. Amara appeared beside him, her expression serious. Not just a storm, a dust cyclone, stronger than anything we've seen in months. If we don't secure the domes, the crops and systems could be damaged. Eli, sitting nearby, tilted his head and reached toward the console. His tiny fingers pointed at a pattern of sensors that indicated weak spots along the dome structure. Jace knelt beside the child. "You think these spots might fail first?" he asked. Eli nodded. His eyes, wide and intelligent, held a calm certainty that surprised Jace. Amara exhaled. "He's right. The northern section has older panels. They won't hold against the full storm. We need to reinforce them." Jace nodded. "All right, let's move fast." The three of them worked quickly, each playing their part. Amara coordinated the structural reinforcements while Jace prepared the robotic systems to protect the crops. Eli, in his small, focused way, guided them to weak points, predicting where the wind would strike hardest and where sand would accumulate. Hours passed and the wind outside grew stronger. The red dust swirled violently, buffeting the dome with a constant, low rumble. Jace glanced at Eli, amazed. Despite the chaos outside, the child remained calm, observing patterns, suggesting corrections, and pointing out hidden dangers. "This kid, he sees things I can't," Jace muttered. Amara smiled faintly. "That's his design. He's meant to notice details humans sometimes miss." But even I didn't expect him to be this precise. Together, they tightened panels, adjusted the dome's angle, and reinforced critical joints. The robotic sheep were herded into a protected enclosure, and the crop systems were temporarily shielded with portable barriers. All the while, Eli pointed and gestured, his tiny hands directing them with uncanny accuracy. By late afternoon, the storm hit in full force. Outside, a swirl of red dust and wind battered the landscape, but inside the dome they were safe. The reinforced panels held, the crops remained unharmed, and the robotic systems hummed steadily, protected by human ingenuity and careful planning. As the storm raged on, Jace sat beside Eli, watching him adjust a small sensor on the floor. "I don't know how you do it," Jace said softly. "Even adults wouldn't notice half the things you saw today." Eli looked up and gave a tiny smile, then returned to his work. Amara approached, wiping sweat from her brow. "He's more than just a child," she said quietly. "He's a bridge between humans and the future. He helps humans do things they didn't think possible, understand patterns they wouldn't normally notice." Jace frowned. "Wait, what do you mean more than a child? What is he exactly?" Amara hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Eli isn't a regular child. He's an experiment, a project I've been working on for years. He was designed to help humans observe, predict, and solve complex problems. He's human, yes, but he's enhanced. His mind works differently." Jace blinked, absorbing her words. "Enhanced? Like smarter than a regular kid?" Amara shook her head. "Not just smarter. He sees patterns, senses connections, and understands emotions in a way humans often overlook. He's empathy, logic, and observation combined. I didn't bring him here to prove anything, just to help. But the truth is, he's already changing everything he touches." Jace looked at Eli, who was carefully guiding a robotic herder to a safer position. The child's small hands and bright eyes radiated focus, understanding, and intelligence beyond his apparent age. Jace felt a strange mix of awe and protectiveness. "You really think he can handle all this?" Jace asked. Amara nodded. "He has to, but he's not alone. He has you now. He learns best when humans guide him, when humans care. That's what makes him special." The storm continued through the night, but inside the dome they worked together seamlessly. Every gust of wind, every sand swirl, every weak panel was countered by the combined efforts of human ingenuity and Eli's extraordinary perception. By morning, the storm had passed. The Martian landscape outside was a swirl of dust and flattened dunes, but inside the dome, everything was intact. The crops thrived, the robots worked efficiently, and Jace realized for the first time how much he had relied on Eli's insight. He knelt beside the child, gently brushing a small lock of hair from his forehead. I think we might have survived because of you." Eli looked up at him, eyes wide but calm, as if he understood the weight of the words. He reached out a tiny hand and placed it on Jace's arm, a simple gesture of connection that spoke volumes. Amara watched quietly, her expression a mix of pride and relief. "He's not just a child. He's a part of the future of human settlement here, and today he proved it." The day after the storm, Jace walked among the crops, inspecting them with Eli by his side. Every plant was healthy, every robot accounted for. Even the systems that had been threatened by the cyclone were intact. And yet, what impressed Jace most was Eli's quiet presence. The child moved with purpose, noticing the smallest irregularities, the tilt of a panel, the angle of a water sprayer, the alignment of a solar collector. Every time Eli pointed something out, Jace saw the efficiency improve, the system work better, and the farm thrive. "You know," Jace said, watching Eli adjust a sensor, "I've never met anyone like you. Not humans, not robots. No one sees the world the way you do." Eli clapped his tiny hands, delighted at the praise. Amara smiled and placed her hand gently on Jace's shoulder. "He's teaching all of us something, Jace. Humans, technology, even the planet itself. He shows us the power of observation, of care, and of intelligence used with empathy." Jace felt a warmth spread through him. He realized that the child's presence had shifted more than just the farm's efficiency. It had shifted his life, his perspective, his sense of purpose. As evening fell, the three of them gathered inside the dome. Eli played with small tools, adjusting and assembling parts of the robots for fun. Jace watched, fascinated as the child tinkered with precision that was both playful and genius. "You know," Jace said softly to Amara, "I thought life here would be lonely. But with him, it's like everything's alive again. Not just the plants and robots, but the farm and even me." Amara nodded. "That's the effect he has. He brings out the best in humans. He shows us what we can do when we work together, when we notice, when we care." Later, as the dome lights dimmed, Jace held Eli gently in his arms, looking out at the red Martian horizon. The wind was calm now, and the stars twinkled faintly in the Martian sky. "You changed everything today, little one," Jace whispered. Eli smiled and reached up, touching Jace's cheek with a small, warm hand. Amara watched them, quietly proud. She had brought Eli here to help humans adapt, to assist them in seeing what they might have missed. But she hadn't realized just how much he would change one man's life, one farm, and perhaps, eventually, the future of human settlement on Mars. And for the first time, Jace understood something profound. Humans were capable of extraordinary things. Not just because of strength or tools, but because of ingenuity, empathy, and connection. And Eli, small, curious, and remarkable, was a living proof of that truth. In that quiet, red-lit dome, surrounded by thriving crops and humming robots, Jace, Amara, and Eli had faced the storm together. They had survived, adapted, and grown stronger. And they all knew, silently, that the child's presence had begun a new chapter for them, a chapter full of possibility, discovery, and hope. Mars was no longer a lonely frontier. It was a place of learning, growth, and extraordinary human potential. And Eli, the small child with extraordinary perception, had shown them all just how far humanity could reach. The days after the storm were calm, but the air was charged with a quiet sense of possibility. The Martian sun rose slowly, casting a soft orange glow across the red dunes, and the dome at Jace's ranch gleamed under its light. The storm had tested their skills, their teamwork, and most importantly, their bond. And now, something subtle was changing in the way they lived. Jace walked through the crop fields, Eli toddling at his side. The child had become a constant presence, observing, learning, and offering suggestions that seemed impossibly precise. Even the robotic systems moved more efficiently when Eli was around, as if they responded to his quiet guidance. "You know," Jace said, glancing down at Eli, "I never thought I'd say this, but you make this place better." Eli clapped his hands, pleased, and pointed at a row of crops that needed slight adjustments. Jace knelt and followed the child's guidance, tweaking the irrigation flow and nutrient levels. Within minutes, the plants perked up, green leaves reaching toward the light. Amara joined them, holding a small tablet. "He's changing more than the farm," she said softly. "He's changing how we think, how we work, how we see our own potential." Jace looked at her, surprised. "I didn't realize it could be that profound." Amara smiled. "Humans are capable of more than we give ourselves credit for, and Eli helps remind us of that." As the week progressed, the trio developed a rhythm. Mornings were spent inspecting the fields and maintaining the robots. Afternoons were for experiments, testing new nutrient formulas, adjusting solar panels, and even designing small machines to help with repetitive tasks. And evenings were for rest, stories, and quiet reflection. Eli had a favorite spot in the dome, a small corner where he could watch the robotic sheep and the plants simultaneously. From there, he noticed patterns that even Jace had missed: a sensor slightly misaligned, a robot that moved slower than the others, a patch of soil that needed extra care. Each observation led to improvements, making the farm more productive and resilient. One afternoon, Jace and Amara were discussing a new water circulation system when Eli toddled over, holding a small, irregularly shaped rock. He placed it beside the control panel, tapping it gently. "What is it?" Jace asked, curious. Amara knelt beside the child. "He's noticing a mineral imbalance in the soil. The rock contains a trace element that can help adjust the nutrient levels. He's suggesting we use it in the hydroponic solution. Jace stared in awe. A child noticing minerals that affect crops better than I do. That's incredible, Amara nodded. Eli sees connections that humans often overlook. He's part observation, part empathy, part pure intellect, and he thrives when humans guide him when we trust his insights. Jace smiled, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. I think he's teaching me as much as I'm teaching him. Even the robots seemed to respond to Eli's presence. Their movements became more fluid, their efficiency improved. It was as if they recognized a new pattern in the way humans and machines could work together. And the farm, once a quiet, routine place, was now alive with energy, innovation, and possibility. One evening, as the Martian sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft purple hue across the dunes, Jace, Amara, and Eli gathered in the dome. Eli was building a small contraption from spare parts, a device meant to measure the efficiency of the irrigation system. His small hands moved with precision, assembling pieces that even Jace would have taken hours to align correctly. "That's impressive," Jace said, watching Eli work. Amara smiled. "He learns through doing. Observation is just part of it. Experience shapes his understanding too." Eli looked up at Jace, then pointed at a sensor he had just fixed. Jace followed the gesture and realized the adjustment had improved the flow of water across multiple sections of the farm. He shook his head in amazement. "You're right, little one," he said softly. "You really do see things differently." Days turned into weeks, and the bond between the three deepened. Jace found himself relying on Eli's insights more and more, not just for the farm, but for understanding patterns in life itself. The child's curiosity was infectious, and Jace noticed that he was asking questions, observing details, and thinking in ways he hadn't in years. Amara watched this transformation quietly, feeling a sense of pride and relief. She had created Eli to help humans, but she hadn't anticipated the depth of change he would bring. He wasn't just a helper, he was a catalyst for growth, a spark that reminded humans of their potential. One day, Jace and Amara were repairing a solar panel when Eli toddled over with a small notebook. He had drawn a diagram, connecting various elements of the farm in a way that suggested new efficiencies. "What's this?" Jace asked, curious. Eli pointed at the lines, then at the panels, then at the irrigation system. He clapped his hands together, smiling. Amara knelt beside him. "He's suggesting a redesign of the water flow and energy distribution. It's simple, elegant, and effective. And he came up with it on his own." Jace studied the diagram, then looked at the child in amazement. I don't even know how to respond. This is brilliant." Eli smiled, his eyes sparkling. Jace felt a deep sense of respect and wonder. The child's presence was not just helping. They were transforming the way they approached challenges, the way they thought about solutions, the way they lived. That night the three sat together, watching the Martian sky. Stars twinkled faintly above the red horizon, distant suns lighting the dust in the atmosphere. "You've changed everything here," Jace said softly to Eli. The child reached out a tiny hand and placed it on Jace's arm, a simple gesture of connection and trust. Amara smiled, placing her hand on Jace's shoulder. "And we've changed with him. That's the point. Humanity grows through connection, through empathy, and through the courage to adapt. Eli shows us what we can do when we notice, when we care, and when we work together." Jace looked at the two of them, feeling a mixture of awe and humility. "I thought I was just surviving out here, but with you two, it feels like we're building something extraordinary." Eli clapped his hands, delighted, and pointed at the robotic sheep outside. He began guiding one of the machines toward a new feeding area, demonstrating his understanding of efficiency, patterns, and care. Jace laughed softly. "All right, little one, lead the way." Amara watched quietly, feeling a sense of hope and fulfillment. The child's presence had not only improved the farm, They had improved themselves, their understanding of life, and their connection to the world around them. In the following days, their collaboration reached new heights. They experimented with new plant varieties, tested innovative energy storage methods, and even explored ways to make the robotic systems more intuitive. Every small success was guided by Eli's insight, his observations, and his unique perception of patterns and relationships. Through it all, Jace learned to trust the child's instincts. Even when something seemed impossible, Eli's perspective often revealed a path forward. And in turn, Eli learned patience, empathy, and the importance of working with humans, not just observing them. The farm flourished like never before. Crops grew faster, robots moved more efficiently, and the dome felt alive with a quiet, steady energy. But more importantly, the people within it were thriving. Jace felt a renewed sense of purpose, Amara felt pride and hope, and Eli felt the warmth of a family, a place where his abilities were valued, where his observations mattered, and where he was loved. One evening, as the Martian sky turned a deep shade of violet, Jace stood at the edge of the dome, watching the sun set over the red plains. Eli toddled up beside him, holding a small flower he had nurtured from seed. "You see, Jace," Amara said softly from behind, "it's not just the farm that has grown, we all have. Humanity grows when we notice, when we care, when we act together, and Eli reminds us of that every day." Jace looked down at the child, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "You've changed my life, Eli, and I think you'll change many more." Eli smiled, holding the tiny flower proudly. Jace realized that this small, extraordinary child had not only transformed their farm, their routines, and their systems. He had transformed their hearts, their minds, and their vision of what life on Mars could be. And as the stars began to twinkle above the red Martian plains, Jace, Amara, and Eli stood together, a family forged not by circumstance but by choice, curiosity, and the quiet, transformative power of human potential. Mars was no longer a lonely frontier. It was a place of growth, understanding, and endless possibility. And with Eli's guidance, humanity had begun to discover just how extraordinary it could be. The Martian morning began calm and clear, the horizon glowing with pale shades of orange and gold. The dust storms of the past weeks were behind them, leaving the plains serene and peaceful. Inside the dome, life had settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and extraordinary. Jace walked through the hydroponic rows, Eli toddling beside him. The child's small hands reached out to touch the plants, feeling their leaves and stems with careful curiosity. Each morning, Jace noticed something new, how Eli's presence changed the way even the robots moved, how he subtly improved efficiency, and how his keen perception made the farm safer and more productive. "Look here," Eli said softly, pointing at a drooping leaf. Jace bent down, following his gaze. The plant's nutrient levels were slightly off. With a quick adjustment guided by Eli, the leaf perked up almost immediately. "You really do see everything," Jace said, smiling. "I don't know how you do it." Eli clapped his hands in delight, pleased with the praise. Amara watched from a nearby workstation, her eyes warm and proud. She had brought Eli to this remote ranch to assist humans in ways she had only imagined in theory. But now, watching him interact with Jace and the farm, she knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. Weeks turned into months, and the farm flourished. Crops grew faster, water usage was optimized, and energy from the solar panels was stored and distributed more efficiently than ever before. But it wasn't just the systems that had improved. Jace felt transformed. He had learned to trust intuition, to value observation, and to embrace collaboration in ways he hadn't considered possible. And Eli, small as he was, had guided that growth. One afternoon, Jace and Amara were working on a new irrigation design when Eli toddled over, holding a small rock. He pointed to the soil and then to the rock, his gesture clear and insistent. "He's noticing a mineral imbalance again," Amara said softly. "It's remarkable how he connects things we might overlook." Jace knelt beside Eli, examining the soil. Sure enough, the minerals were slightly off balance. With Eli's guidance, they corrected it, ensuring the crops would thrive. "You're not just a child," Jace said quietly, brushing Eli's hair from his forehead. You're a part of this place." Eli smiled, his bright eyes shining. Jace realized that the child had not only improved the farm's systems, but had also changed the way they all thought about life on Mars. As the weeks passed, their collaboration extended beyond the dome. Jace and Amara began designing experiments to test new crops, renewable energy ideas, and robotic systems, all guided by Eli's perception. The child's small gestures often led to discoveries and improvements that neither adult could have anticipated. One evening, as the Martian sun set behind distant dunes, painting the sky in shades of violet and pink, the three of them sat together on a small platform overlooking the fields. Eli held a tiny flower he had grown, watching its petals stretch toward the light. "Do you see that?" Jace asked softly. "Everything you touch, it grows, it improves, it becomes better." Eli clapped his hands, delighted, and handed the flower to Amara. She smiled, tucking it into a small pot. "You've changed this place," she said softly. "But more importantly, you've changed us," Jace nodded. "I thought I was just surviving out here, but with you two, it feels like we're building something important, something lasting." And they were. The farm had become more than a place to grow food. It had become a hub of learning, innovation, and hope. Other humans in the nearby colonies began to notice their success. Reports of thriving crops, efficient systems, and harmonious collaboration between humans and Eli's guidance reached the administrators. Slowly, word spread that life on Mars could be sustainable, innovative, and joyful. One morning, a small delegation of scientists arrived, curious about the child and the thriving farm. They observed quietly as Jace and Amara demonstrated the systems, while Eli pointed out subtle details, adjustments, and improvements. The scientists were amazed at the child's perception, his understanding of patterns, and the gentle guidance he offered. "This is remarkable," one of the scientists said. "We've never seen anything like it. How does he know all this?" Jace smiled softly. "He's not just smart. He sees the world differently, and he teaches us to see it too." Amara added, "He's humanity at its best, curious, empathetic, inventive. He shows what we can do when we observe, learn, and care." Eli clapped his small hands, pleased with the praise, but quickly returned to his work, pointing out a subtle adjustment to the water flow system. Jace and Amara followed, making the correction and marveling once again at the child's insight. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between the three grew stronger. Life on Mars was no longer a challenge to endure. It was a canvas for discovery, learning, and hope. Jace found joy in teaching Eli, watching him grow, and discovering new ways to collaborate. Amara found pride in the child she had nurtured and excitement in seeing her vision realized. And Eli, in his quiet, observant way, showed them both the beauty of human potential. One evening, as the stars twinkled above the red Martian plains, Jace held Eli in his arms, looking out at the horizon. The child rested his small head against Jace's chest, calm and trusting. "You've changed everything," Jace whispered. "I don't know where we'd be without you." Eli smiled, reaching up to touch Jace's face gently. Amara stood nearby, placing a hand on Jace's shoulder. "He's changed all of us," she said softly. "And one day he'll change even more. Humanity thrives when we work together, when we care, when we notice. He reminds us of that every day." The next morning, Jace, Amara, and Eli began a new project, building an expanded greenhouse that could sustain even more crops and accommodate new colonists. Eli's guidance helped them plan the structure efficiently, minimizing resource use while maximizing growth potential. The child's observations were precise, his suggestions innovative, and his joy contagious. As they worked, Jace realized something profound. Humanity's strength wasn't just in technology or knowledge, it was in connection, empathy, and ingenuity. Eli embodied all of these qualities, and through him, Jace saw the true potential of humans to thrive, even in the harshest environments. Weeks later, the greenhouse was complete. Crops flourished like never before, robots moved in perfect harmony, and the farm had become a model for sustainable life on Mars. Colonists visited, scientists observed, and everyone marveled at the harmony between humans, machines, and the extraordinary child who guided them. Jay stood at the edge of the greenhouse, Eli by his side, watching the sun rise over the red dunes. "We did it," he said softly. "All of this, it's real." Eli clapped his small hands, pointing at the thriving crops and the moving robots. His eyes sparkled with delight and pride. Amara smiled, placing her hand on Jace's shoulder. "We did it together, and we'll continue to do it together." Humanity grows when we notice, when we care, and when we act with purpose. Eli reminds us of that every day. Jace